Alright, yeah! Thank God for fantasy football. I'm Buster Brown, and the show is called Redemption Rehab. And if you tuned in today, it's for one reason. It's to start winning championships in fantasy football. Here we are on our website, fantasyfootballredemptionrehab.com. When you get a chance, check it out. Today, we're talking about the rookies coming into the NFL from college. Whether it's running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, or quarterbacks, we give you everything you need to know to help you to start winning championships in fantasy football starting in 2021. So buckle up, get out your popcorn, and let's head over to the chalkboard
and check out the facts.
Okay, here we are on drafttech.com checking out the rookie running backs coming into the NFL in 2021. On the right side of your screen, you see over here that Travis Etienne out of Clemson is the number one ranked running back coming into the NFL in 2021, followed by Nadja Harris. Both of these guys are going to get drafted in all your dynasty leagues, along with many of these players on the right side of your screen behind me. In your redraft leagues that a lot of us play in, whether it's PPR, standard, or half PPR, the first two running backs are definitely getting drafted. At the end of this video, we'll show you where they are in early February ADP, average draft position. They haven't been drafted into the NFL. That will change their average draft position going into the season. But your two top picks are these guys, Travis Etienne out of Clemson and Nadja Harris out of Alabama. We will also focus on Kenneth Gainwell, Trey Sermon, Devonta Williams, and Chuba Hubbard. These guys are some players that are going to get taken in the NFL draft around the end of April, beginning of May, and that's when you'll know where you should be drafting them in your dynasty leagues and your upcoming redraft leagues. Why do we use drafttech.com? Look, we use drafttech.com and we put up last year's rookies coming in the league over here, starting with DeAndre Swift. DraftTech is the number one go-to site when you want to know who's coming into the league at any position. And we're talking running backs today. Look at some of the big names that have impacted fantasy football that we told you about in our video last year on running backs coming into the league, and we featured these guys. We told you DeAndre Swift was going to be a big-time player. He had double-digit touchdowns for Detroit, and he only started 4 of the 13 games he played in. We told you our favorite running back last year was Jonathan Taylor after rushing for 6,000 yards in 3 seasons at Wisconsin. This kid was a workhorse in Wisconsin, and he was for the Colts. And I tell you what, he's going to be even better this year behind a good offensive line. He had double-digit touchdowns. We told you about J.K. Dobbins, who had 9 touchdowns for the Baltimore Ravens. We told you about Cam Akers, who came on strong at the end of the season for the Los Angeles Rams. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the first of the running backs to be taken last year from the Kansas City Chiefs. He only had 5 touchdowns. He's undersized, but we told you about him, and he had a decent year. You can't forget about A.J. Dillon up in Green Bay. We told you about him. Keep an eye on him. He looks like he's going to have the backfield to himself in Green Bay in 2021. And we can't forget about this guy. We did not mention him last year. His name's James Robinson, played for the Jacksonville Jaguars. You could have picked him up on your waiver wire week 1 or 2, and he ended up finishing second, only behind Jonathan Taylor in fantasy points in 2020. That's why you go to DraftTech to find out the players coming into the NFL from college. All those guys did well in fantasy football in 2020. That's what we're taking a look at now, is the guys over here, starting with Travis Etienne out of Clemson. So stick around. We'll get into some of the numbers behind these guys and show you where they might be drafted at the end of the video. So stick around. We'll show you the rounds they're going in early February or March. Okay, the first running back we want to focus on coming into the NFL in 2021 is Travis Etienne out of Clemson. He won a national championship with these guys a few years ago with Trevor Lawrence. Look, this kid can catch the ball to the backfield and he can run the ball. He's only about 5'10", 205 pounds, little undersized for the NFL, but he produced in college. So let's take a look at his career. You can see over here, he played 4 years at Clemson in the ACC, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior at running back. These are the games he played in. He had almost 700 rushing attempts for almost 5,000 yards in 4 seasons. His average rushing attempt was 7.2 yards per carry and had 70 touchdowns. Wow. And he managed to catch 102 balls throughout his career. He had 1,155 receiving yards at 11.3 yards per catch with another 8 touchdowns. His total yards from scrimmage was 788 yards. He had 6,000 yards in his career in college with an average of 7.8 per touch and a whopping 78 touchdowns. Look, Travis Etienne is a player. He's a little undersized at 205, but you know what? He'll bulk up and he'll be a main fantasy football player for years to come. And I guarantee you, wherever he's drafted this year, next year, depending upon who drafts him, I expect him to be drafted early and often in all your leagues in 2022. But we want to give you an idea who Travis Etienne is going into this season for all you dynasty players and redraft players in 2021. When we come back, we're going to take a look at another major player coming in the NFL from college, and his name is Nadja Harris out of Alabama. Okay, here we are back taking a look at the running backs coming in the NFL in the 2021 season from college. And if you want to see a good running back that won a national championship last year with Alabama, it's this guy, Nadja Harris. And Nadja Harris had a great career in his 4 years with Alabama. He's a 6'2", 230-pound running back. He played 4 years at Alabama in the SEC. He won a national championship. He was a running back. You can see here the games he played in. These are the attempts. He had a lot of attempts, over 638. His rushing yards in 4 years was 3,843 with a 6-yard average, and he scored a whopping 46 touchdowns on the ground with 26 his senior year. You can see here he can also catch the ball to the backfield, catching 43 balls his senior year and a total of 80 throughout his career. He had 781 yards receiving. He has averages 9.8 yards per catch with 11 TD. As you can see here, yards from scrimmage was attempts. He had 718, 4,624 total yards with an average of 6.4 yards per carry and a whopping 57 touchdowns. Look, Travis Etienne's a good player for Clemson. Nadja Harris has been a good player for Alabama. These are the two players you're going to want to focus on in your redraft leagues and in your dynasty leagues. I expect that both or one of them will be drafted in the first round or early in the second round. You need to know who those two players are heading forward in fantasy football because they're going to have big years depending upon who drafts them at the end of April, beginning of May, in this year's NFL draft. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some other players you need to know about in this year's draft. Okay, another running back that Draft Tech has ranked really high as their third best running back is this guy, Kenneth Gainwell out of Memphis. As you can see here, he only played a couple years for Memphis in the American Football League as a freshman. And you can see here was a running back where he had 235 attempts for 1,550 yards at a 6.6 yard per carry and scored 14 TDs, mostly in his senior year. He did catch 50 balls his senior year for a total of 57 for 662 yards, and there's his average with 3 TDs. He only had 292 attempts for Memphis for over 2,000 yards and 17 TDs. But the thing that everybody likes about these guys, and the thing that Draft Tech saw that everybody else sees, is why he's going to be drafted probably late second, third round of the NFL draft, is, man, is this guy a highlight reel. He's only 5'11", 190 pounds. I mean, to take a beating in the NFL at 190 pounds, can he survive the constant brutal hits he's going to take? Most of these running backs we're going to look at are 220 to 230 pounds. This guy's a $190. He's got to put on some weight and some muscle to make it in the NFL. But we wanted to give you an idea who this guy was, because every time he touches a ball, he's likely to have a big play. I mean, he's a human highlight reel his senior year in Memphis. Draft Tech likes him. We'll see how he does and who drafts him in the NFL draft. When we come back, we're going to take a look at an Ohio State Buckeye who had an amazing senior season after leaving Oklahoma. And his name is Trey Sermon. Okay, here we are taking a look at Trey Sermon of the Ohio State Buckeyes. As you can see, he didn't start out with the Buckeyes. His freshman, sophomore, and junior year, he played for Oklahoma. And he was a big-time player for them. As you can see, his career stats here in Oklahoma that we have here highlighted in yellow. But for his overall stats, as you can see here, he had a pretty good career. 455 attempts for almost 3,000 yards, 6.5 per carry with 26 TDs. He can also catch the ball out of the backfield. He had 486 yards receiving with a 10-yard average and 3 more TDs for a 500 total plays per scrimmage, over 3,000 yards with 29 TDs. Look, if you want to see this kid, Trey Sermon, play football, look at his game in the Big Ten Championship game in 2020 against Northwestern. This kid was a human highlight reel in one game. And then he followed that up by going to play Clemson in the semifinals. And he was a big-time player in the Clemson-Ohio State game that helped Ohio State go to the championship game. Unfortunately, in the championship game, Trey Sermon got hurt on his first play. Wow. Can only imagine if it would have changed things if he had played the whole game. But this guy's going to get drafted most likely in the third round of the NFL draft. And he's going to be a big-time player in the NFL. That's why Draft Tech thinks you need to know who he is, and so do we at Fantasy Football Redemption Rehab. Now, we come back, we're going to show you another player who's a sleeper pick that Draft Tech likes and we like too, and his name is Chuba Hubbard from the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Okay, here we are taking a look at Chuba Hubbard from the Oklahoma State Cowboys. He's about 6 foot, 210 pounds, and this kid is fast. He's out of Canada. And I'll tell you what, he also returns punts and kickoffs. So I look for him to go end of the second round, beginning of the third round in the NFL draft. I like him because he's got size, but he's really fast. If you take a look at his career at Oklahoma State, he played there in the Big 12 for 3 years. He didn't do much his senior year because they only played 7 games. But you can see here he still had almost 600 rushing attempts for over 3,000 yards. He's got a decent average with 33 touchdowns, which means he finds the end zone. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He had 53 catches for almost 500 yards with a 9-yard average and another 3 TDs. His plays from scrimmage were 638 with almost 4,000 yards total in 3 years with a 6.2 yard per carry average and 36 touchdowns. I tell you what, I really like Chuba Hubbard. Depending upon where he goes to play football and what team drafts him, this kid can play a lot of positions, and I think he might be a sleeper pick in your dynasty leagues and in your redraft leagues. Okay, we got a couple more running backs we want to show you. Both of them came from the same school out of North Carolina. Draft Tech thinks they're in their top 6, 7 running backs. So we're going to show them to you because I tell you what, they're going to get drafted in the NFL on day 2 or 3. And you know what? They're going to produce in the NFL. So we have to show you who they are so you can decide where you want to draft them in your dynasty leagues or possibly throw them in at the end of your draft in a redraft league or even pick them up on the waiver wire. The first guy I want to show you is Devonta Williams. These are his stats down here. You can see here he played 3 years at North Carolina in the ACC. He had decent stats as rushing, 366 rushing attempts, 2,097 yards with a decent average of 6.3 and another 29 touchdowns. In these touchdowns, I did see him play a lot of these games. I saw him get a lot of touchdowns in his career inside the 10-yard line. That's where his bread and butter was, but he can be a playmaker and he can catch the ball. Let's take a look at those stats. As you can see here, he had 50 receptions for 539 yards and a 10-yard per catch average. That's pretty good. And he had 4 TDs. So his total plays from scrimmage were 416 plays for 2,836 yards. This is his 6.8 yards per average on each play he touched the ball, which is really good. And he totaled 33 touchdowns. I'm going to tell you what, this guy is 5'10", 220 pounds. That means he can play in the NFL and take the pounding. The other guy we want to show you is Michael Carter. Difference between these two guys is Devonta Williams is 5'10", 220 pounds, maybe 225 pounds, goal line back. Michael Carter's not like that, man. He's only 5'8", 5'9". He's like 190, 195 pounds. But guess what? He had an amazing college career, maybe even better than Devonta Williams, and they played in the same backfield, and he's going to get drafted in the NFL. Let's take a look at his stats. Okay, here we are taking a look at another North Carolina running back, and his name is Michael Carter. He had a good career, 4-year career with North Carolina. And I tell you what, he had great parents, both served in the armed services, raised this kid properly, and you know what? It shows with what he did in college. Let's take a look at his stats. As you can see here, he played 4 years for North Carolina in the ACC. And running back, and these are the games he played in. You can see right here, he played in the same backfield with Devonta Williams, but he had more carries, 514 for 3,404 yards with a 6.6 yard per carry on average, and he scored 22 TDs. Thing about the reason I like this guy is he produced the entire 4 years. He's a little bit smaller, like I said, that 5'8", 5'9", 190, 195 pound, has to put on some muscle to compete in the NFL, but he's going to get drafted. He's probably going to play, and you should consider taking him in your dynasty leagues, maybe even your redraft leagues, if depending upon who signs him or drafts him in the NFL. He's probably going to be on your waiver wire week 1 or week 2 in your redraft league, so keep an eye out for Michael Carter. Let's see what he did in the receiving game. You can see here he had 82 receptions in 4 years for 656 yards at 8.0 per catch average with 6 TDs. His career's stats, not too bad. 596 touches for 4,000 yards, 6.8 average per touch with 28 TDs. Look, we showed you a lot of guys today. We got half a dozen guys you should be looking at running back for your dynasty leagues or redraft leagues, just like we did last year. Somebody's going to break out. We really like what we showed you from Draft Tech. They show all the running backs. There is no NFL Combine this year, so don't look for it. Some sports agents are doing some expo thing down in Texas that might be interesting, but there is no NFL Combine. So where these guys get drafted is anybody's guess. It's all going to be based on what happened in their career. And a lot of guys didn't even get to play in 2020 because of COVID-19. So what we're going to do now is we're going to show you where some of these guys are being drafted in an average draft position sheet on Fantasy Football Calculator. You need to know what rounds these guys are going in. It's the middle of February. It's going to change when the NFL draft happens because some running backs are going to be taken by teams that need to run the ball, and they might not have a lot of competition. So some of these guys are going to move up, some of these guys are moved down, and we're going to show you where their average draft position is in 2021 right now. Okay, we told you about who the guys are coming into the NFL from college, and I also promised you, let's find out where they're going to go on draft day. This February 2021, so it's a little early. And here they are on one of my favorite websites, fantasyfootballcalculator.com. It's my go-to site when I want to look up an average draft position of where a player's going to go. And here's the rounds over here, rounds, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down. And here is the picks at which they would be if they were to be a draft tomorrow. That's why it's called an average draft position sheet. And here's some of the guys we talked about. We told you that Nadja Harris would be one of the top rookie running backs coming into the NFL. And here he's being drafted in round 10 over here as the 4th pick. I can tell you right now, he's probably going to move up depending upon who drafts him. I could see him moving up into this 4th and 5th round depending upon what team drafts him, just like the running backs did last year. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was just down here in this area, maybe even lower, rounds 13 and 14. He got drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. Last year in 2020, ended up being a 1st or 2nd round pick in most leagues. Same thing with Jonathan Taylor. We told you we really liked him. He was, in this 7th, 8th round in this area over here last year at this time. Guess what? He ended up being a 2nd or 3rd round pick, leading all rookies in rushing and in TDs and scoring in fantasy football. So knowing who's coming into the league is one of the most important things you can do, whether it's at running back, wide receiver, tight end, or quarterback. And as you can see here, there's the running backs we've been talking about. Nadja Harris right now is a 10th, maybe 11th round pick. We told you about Travis Etienne out of Clemson. He's being projected before the draft because it's only February of 2021 and round 11. Here we told you about Devonta Williams. I mean, he's looking at it being a 12th round pick, depending upon where he's drafted. We told you we really like Trey Sermon. He's over here in round 14. Look for him to move up. And Chuba Hubbard, our sleeper running back, we told you we really like this guy. He's going to get drafted in the 2nd or 3rd round of this year's NFL draft. But we wanted to show you where these guys were going. Now, the running backs, they're going to be taken earlier from last year in 2020. Those rookies, as you can see, have really moved up. We went over some of those guys right here, but you could see in the 2nd round right here, Jonathan Taylor was a rookie in 2020, and he's going in the average draft position around the 2nd round. I say he moves up into the 1st round by August. And then you can see here's another guy, James Robinson. He was a rookie in 2020. He wasn't a highly drafted player in any league. He wasn't drafted high in the NFL, and he wasn't high on DraftTech.com sheet where they rate these players. But here he is going in the 2nd round for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was a rookie last year. And as you can see right here, another rookie from 2020 is Clyde Edwards-Helaire along with DeAndre Swift. These guys are going in the 3rd round, probably going to move up into the 2nd round in some leagues. One of my favorite players is Antonio Gibson. Draft Tech did have him ranked higher, but he was known as a change of pace back. So when you go to Draft Tech, you have to click on running back, and it has a C next to it. That's called change of pace. Antonio Gibson was ranked high on that list, and here he is going in the 3rd round. And it goes here. Look, here's Cam Akers, and here's J.K. Dobbins. These are all guys that we told you last year were people you should watch. Look, what is that, 7 guys? Well, we gave you half a dozen this year to look at. So the running back position this year is as good as I've seen it in a long time. So you might not have to take a running back in the 1st round or 2nd round, because look, you can get running backs throughout the draft this year. And I'll tell you what, the rookies of last year was a phenomenal class. They're going to do good in 2021. And these guys down here, the guys we talked about earlier today, the rookies coming in the league, they're all going to move up. Going to create a log jam up there in the first 5 rounds once the NFL draft is over at the end of April, beginning of May. Well, hopefully you learned something. We showed you a lot. We showed you rookies coming in the league in 2021. We compared them to the rookie running backs from 2020. There's a lot to digest here. You want to take it in early in the year. That way you're not trying to cram it all in July and August before your draft. I'm Buster Brown. The show is called Redemption Rehab. Good luck.